It had been 10 years since Georgie had last seen his father. A decade had passed since that fateful day when the accident had taken him away. Since then, life had gone on, slowly and quietly, without the man who had once been his rock, his guiding force. Georgie had grown up, graduated from college, started a career, and moved on in ways that both hurt and healed. But there was always that empty space in his heart where his father used to be. Now standing alone in front of his father's grave, Georgie felt the weight of the years pressing down on him. The cemetery was quiet, the soft rustling of the wind through the trees the only sound. Georgie looked down at the weathered stone, the letters of his father's name barely visible after so many years. He knelt down and placed a hand on the cold stone. The pain of the loss hadn't gone away, but it had dulled over the years. "I've missed you, Dad," Georgie whispered, his voice barely audible. "I wish you could have seen how far I've come, how much I've changed." His father's grave had always been a place of quiet reflection for Georgie, but today felt different. Today something seemed off, like there was something waiting for him, something more than just the usual sorrow and longing. Georgie sat down on the damp grass, looking around the cemetery. The place had an eerie stillness to it, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. He scanned the rows of gravestones, searching for any sign of life, but there was nothing. No birds, no animals, just the unsettling quiet of the dead. Then, just as he was about to stand up and leave, something caught his eye. A small object, glinting in the sunlight, half buried in the grass near his father's grave. He reached down and carefully pulled it out. It was an old coin, tarnished by time, but unmistakable. He turned it over in his hand, and his heart stopped. The coin had his father's initials on it, along with a strange symbol etched into the surface. Georgie felt a chill run through him as he stared at the object. How had it ended up here? It hadn't been there the last time he visited. Had someone left it as a tribute, or was it something else entirely? As Georgie examined the coin further, he felt a strange sensation, almost like a whisper in his ear. He spun around, but there was no one in sight. The wind had picked up, and the trees swayed ominously, casting long shadows across the graveyard. Suddenly, Georgie's mind raced. What if this coin had something to do with his father's death? What if his father had left him a message, something he had hidden for years, waiting for Georgie to find it? He stood up quickly, clutching the coin in his hand, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to know what this meant. He had to find out the truth. The weight of the coin in Georgie's hand felt like a tether, pulling him back to a past he had long tried to bury. The sensation in his chest was like a knot, tightening with every second that passed as he stood there, the cemetery around him still and silent. He glanced at his father's grave once more. There was something he had missed all these years. The years of mourning, the acceptance of his father's death, and the slow rebuild of his life. All of it seemed to be crumbling in an instant, replaced by a deep curiosity and a flicker of fear. Georgie turned the coin over again, tracing his father's initials, J.H. with his thumb. It wasn't like his father to leave strange things behind, certainly not anything this significant. He had always been a man of practicality, never one for cryptic messages. So why the coin? Why now? The symbol etched into the coin was unfamiliar to Georgie, a jagged, interlocking pattern that didn't resemble anything he had ever seen before. It looked ancient, almost as if it didn't belong in this time or place. Was it something his father had been part of? Something he had discovered or hidden away from Georgie? He tucked the coin into his pocket, standing up and brushing the damp grass from his pants. His eyes scanned the graveyard once more, searching for any clues, any signs that could explain what he was holding. But the more he looked, the more unsettling the silence felt. No sounds, no movement. He felt as though the air itself was holding its breath, watching him, waiting for him to make his next move. Georgie walked back to his car, each step heavy with the weight of unanswered questions. The coin burned in his pocket, reminding him that he couldn't leave it behind. Not now. He had to find out what it meant, and more importantly, why it had come to him, now, after all these years. His mind raced as he drove back to his apartment. The city streets unfamiliar in their own way, as though the world had shifted while he wasn't looking. Every corner he turned seemed to hold something he hadn't noticed before. The familiar sights felt foreign, as if he were seeing them for the first time. What was happening? By the time he reached his apartment, night had already begun to fall. He pulled the coin from his pocket and placed it carefully on the table in front of him. The apartment was quiet, almost eerily so. He flicked on the light, casting a warm glow over the coin as he studied it again, determined to uncover its meaning. Georgie grabbed his phone and started searching, typing in every possible keyword he could think of. JH symbol, ancient coins, hidden messages. But nothing came up that made any sense. The symbol was unique, too distinct to be something he could just look up. Frustration gnawed at him, but then his phone buzzed. It was a message from his mother, a simple text. "Are you coming for dinner tonight?" Georgie stared at the message for a long time, his mind still racing with thoughts of the coin and the questions swirling around it. Dinner. He hadn't seen his mother in weeks, and the thought of going back to the house he grew up in felt strange, almost like an interruption in the whirlwind his life had become since finding the coin. He typed back, "I'll be there in 30 minutes." As he grabbed his coat and headed out the door, he couldn't shake the feeling that his visit to the grave was just the beginning. Something about his father's past had been hidden for years, and now Georgie was being drawn into it. Georgie sat quietly at the dinner table. The usual clinking of cutlery and the chatter of family around him felt distant, almost muffled. His mind kept drifting back to the coin, tucked safely in his pocket. His mother had set a plate in front of him, and though he had no appetite, he forced himself to eat. The warm, comforting smells of his childhood home, his mother's cooking, should have soothed him, but instead it made the tension in his chest grow. "So, what's been going on with you lately?" His mother's voice broke through his thoughts. She sat across from him, her face soft with concern, but there was something in her eyes that made Georgie pause. She was still the same mother he had known his whole life, but there was a sense of guardedness there, an emotion Georgie couldn't quite place. He looked up at her, his heart heavy. He had always been close with his mother, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that there were things she wasn't telling him, things she had kept hidden for years, the same way his father had kept things from him. Not much, just trying to figure something out. Georgie's voice was quiet, strained. He didn't want to tell her about the coin yet, not until he knew more. "You know, just life." He flashed her a brief, forced smile, hoping she would leave it at that. His mother nodded slowly, but there was still that look in her eyes. "You know, your father always kept things to himself. Sometimes I wonder if he was hiding more than we realized." The words struck him like a sudden blow. Georgie looked up sharply, meeting his mother's gaze. Had she known? Did she know something about his father's past? Something she had kept from him all these years? "What do you mean?" Georgie's voice cracked slightly as he asked, the curiosity and unease growing inside him. He was desperate for answers, and now it seemed like his mother might have more to offer than he had expected. His mother shifted in her seat, looking down at her hands, her fingers curling around the edge of her napkin. "He was always so quiet, you know, so distant. I used to think it was because of the job, the stress, but now I'm not so sure. There were things about your father's past that he never talked about, things I don't think he wanted you to know." Georgie's heart raced. Was this about the coin? Was this what his father had been hiding? What kinds of things? His voice was barely above a whisper now, the urgency in his question echoing in his mind. He was so close to something that could explain everything. His father's death, the coin, the feeling of something unfinished, unresolved. His mother hesitated, her eyes darting around as if searching for the right words. Finally she spoke, her voice low, almost like she was afraid someone might overhear. "Before he passed, your father told me something strange, something that didn't make sense at the time. But now, I wonder if it was his way of warning me, of warning you." Georgie leaned forward, his breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the answer he had been waiting for. "What did he say?" He almost couldn't get the words out. His mother took a deep breath, clearly fighting back her emotions. He said there were things he had to do, things he had to finish before he could leave. He didn't say what those things were, but I have a feeling. I have a feeling this coin has something to do with it. The words hit him like a freight train. The coin. His father had known about it, and whatever secret it held was the same secret his mother had been hinting at all along. Was this what his father had been trying to protect him from? Georgie stood up abruptly, the need for answers overwhelming. I need to go. I need to figure this out. His mother's face was a mixture of fear and resignation as she watched him. Please be careful, Georgie. I don't know what you're about to get into, but be careful. Your father's past. It wasn't something he wanted you to get involved in. Georgie's mind was already racing, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. His father's hidden past, the strange coin, the cryptic message. Everything was pointing to something far bigger than he had imagined, something dangerous and life-changing. I have to know the truth, Mom. His voice was firm now, but his heart was still pounding with uncertainty. I have to understand what he left behind. As he left the house, his mother's worried eyes followed him, and the cold air outside only seemed to mirror the turmoil inside him. The weight of the coin in his pocket was now a constant reminder that he was on the verge of something. Something big. The question was, what was it? Georgie couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with his mother. Her words echoed in his mind as he drove through the city. The coin still nestled in his pocket, the cool metal pressing against his leg. The weight of it was more than physical. It was a symbol of a mystery his father had left behind, a puzzle that had been waiting for him all these years. He wasn't sure where he was headed, but instinctively he drove toward the outskirts of town, the old neighborhood where he and his father had spent most of their time together. The houses had changed, but the streets still looked familiar, like pieces of a puzzle he was trying to piece together. Georgie could almost hear his father's voice, urging him forward. He parked near an old abandoned warehouse. It was the place where his father used to take him as a child, away from the noise, the chaos of the city, where they could work on projects or just talk. He remembered the old dusty shelves, the smell of oil and wood, and the sound of his father's hammer as he worked on various projects. Georgie stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The door was slightly ajar, and as he pushed it open, the familiar scent of wood and metal filled his nostrils. The space was silent now, empty, save for the remnants of his father's past, tools left behind, boxes of forgotten things. But something else lingered in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Georgie moved deeper into the warehouse, each step heavier than the last. His heart pounded as he searched for something, anything, that could explain the strange coin and the cryptic messages his father had left behind. He reached the back of the warehouse, where a small office had once been tucked away. There, hidden behind an old shelf, was a small chest. The chest looked old, worn, almost as if it had been waiting for someone to open it. With shaking hands, Georgie crouched down and carefully pried the chest open. Inside, he found a collection of letters, photographs, and journals. His father's handwriting filled the pages, written in a language Georgie couldn't understand at first glance. As he flipped through the pages, the words began to make sense. His father had been part of something, something much larger than a simple man's life. The letters spoke of deals, of names Georgie didn't recognize, and of a group his father had been involved with long before Georgie was born. At the bottom of the chest, hidden beneath a pile of old photographs, was another coin, an identical match to the one Georgie had found at his father's grave. But this one had a different inscription, a name, DM. And beside it, there was a map that looked like it had been marked in haste with coordinates that led to a place deep in the forest outside of town. Georgie's breath caught in his throat as he realized what he was holding. His father had been part of a secret group, and the coins were more than just mementos. They were markers, symbols tied to something larger, something dangerous. A cold shiver ran down Georgie's spine. Why had his father hidden this from him? What had he been involved in, and why had it all led to this moment? The room around him seemed to close in as he looked down at the map. The coordinates pointed to an old cabin in the woods, a place he recognized from his childhood. His father had mentioned it once or twice, but never in detail. Georgie didn't know what awaited him there, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. The truth was just ahead, buried in the depths of his father's past. He grabbed the map and the coin, his heart racing as he headed for the door. Whatever this was, whatever dark secret his father had been part of, it was time to uncover it. The night air was thick with tension as Georgie drove out of town, the headlights cutting through the dense fog that had settled over the roads. The coordinates on the map led him into the woods, a place that, once familiar, now felt eerily foreign. The path grew narrower, winding through the trees until the dense canopy of branches overhead seemed to swallow the light, leaving him in almost complete darkness. The cabin was located deep in the woods, a place his father had only vaguely referenced years ago. Georgie had always wondered why his father had insisted on keeping it a secret, why he had never taken him there. He glanced at the second coin in his hand, the weight of it now a constant reminder of how far his father had gone to keep him from the truth. What was hidden in this place? As Georgie's car crunched to a stop on the gravel road near the cabin, he turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the old weathered structure in front of him. The windows were dark, the door slightly ajar, and the wooden beams of the cabin seemed to sag under the weight of years of neglect. His pulse quickened as he stepped out of the car, the sound of leaves crunching beneath his feet louder than he had expected. Every step felt like it was leading him deeper into a past he didn't know existed. He looked down at the coin again, trying to make sense of it all. This had to be the place his father had been hiding from him. Georgie walked cautiously toward the door. It creaked as he pushed it open, the smell of damp wood and decay greeting him as he stepped inside. The faint glow of his flashlight illuminated the room, revealing the remnants of an old life. There were dusty shelves filled with jars, books, and papers scattered around the room. The space felt abandoned, as though no one had been here in years, but something about it felt lived in, as if the cabin had been preserved for a reason. He moved deeper into the cabin, his eyes scanning every corner. What was his father hiding here? Why had he kept this place a secret for so long? Georgie's heart raced as he noticed something strange. In the corner of the room behind an old leather armchair was a trapdoor. It was small, almost hidden from view, but the faint outline of it stood out in the dim light. Could this be where his father had hidden the truth? With a sense of urgency, Georgie approached the trapdoor and knelt down. His hands were shaking as he gripped the handle and pulled it open. The old wood groaned in protest, but it gave way, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward into the darkness. Without hesitating, Georgie grabbed the flashlight and descended. The air grew colder as he moved deeper, the scent of earth and mildew surrounding him. The walls were lined with shelves, but they were filled with nothing but dusty, forgotten trinkets. At the very end of the narrow hallway, a small room opened up. Inside, on a rickety table, was an old chest, just like the one he had found in the warehouse. His father's chest, the chest he had buried in a place he thought no one would ever find. Georgie moved closer, his breath catching in his throat. He could feel his heart pounding against his chest as he opened the chest. Inside, there were more documents, more photographs, and strange artifacts, things that seemed completely out of place in the world he knew. Among the papers, there was one document that caught his eye. It was written in a language he couldn't understand, but the name at the top stood out clearly: the Brotherhood of the Hidden Path. Georgie's blood ran cold. What was this? The Brotherhood of the Hidden Path? His father had been part of some secret group? And what did it have to do with the coin? He picked up the paper, his mind racing with questions. What was his father involved in? And why hadn't he told Georgie about any of this? As he flipped through the papers, he found more symbols. Symbols that matched the one on the coin. The same jagged design, etched into the paper in various places. This wasn't just a group. It was something much darker. Georgie's hand trembled as he picked up a final letter. A letter that his father had written, addressed to him. Georgie, if you are reading this, then you found the truth. The Brotherhood is real, and its reach is beyond what you can imagine. The coins are the key to unlocking their power. Your role in this is more important than you know. Be careful. Trust no one. You are being watched. Georgie's heart stopped. His father had left him this message, a warning. The room seemed to close in on him as the implications of his father's secret life hit him with full force. The brotherhood, the coins. He was being pulled into something much bigger, much darker than he had ever realized. He had come here searching for answers, but now he had more questions than ever. Who was watching him? And why had his father hidden all of this? With the letter clutched tightly in his hand, Georgie knew he couldn't walk away. The truth was right in front of him, and there was no turning back now. The letter in Georgie's hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His mind raced as he read his father's warning over and over. You are being watched. Those words burned into his memory, and with them came a terrifying realization. His father hadn't just left a legacy of secrets. He had left a legacy of danger. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as Georgie's thoughts spun. The Brotherhood of the Hidden Path. What was this group? What did they want with him? With his father? His pulse quickened, and every part of him screamed for answers. The photographs, the strange symbols, the letters, everything was connected. His father had been involved in something far bigger than Georgie had ever imagined, something shadowy, dangerous, and hidden from the world. But why keep it from him? Why now? Georgie glanced around the dimly lit room, the silence almost suffocating. The faint creak of the old house above him seemed to reverberate in the quiet, reminding him that he wasn't alone. He suddenly felt the oppressive weight of being watched, just as his father had warned. His hand gripped the coin tightly in his pocket, the symbol pressing against him as if it were alive, as if it were calling him to do something, to make a choice. He couldn't go back. Georgie stood up, the room spinning with the force of his thoughts. His father had hidden the truth from him all these years, but now it was clear. He was part of something far beyond his understanding. The question wasn't just about what his father had done. It was about what Georgie would do next. The truth had been hidden for so long, buried in this cabin, under the guise of a secret, unspoken world. Suddenly a noise broke through his thoughts. The faint sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, crept down the hallway of the cabin. His breath caught in his throat, and he instinctively reached for the coin in his pocket. Someone else was here. Georgie's heart raced. He turned to face the door, but before he could make another move, the door creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway, dark and looming, partially obscured by the shadows. It wasn't until the figure stepped forward that Georgie's breath caught in his throat. It was someone he recognized, someone from his past. I knew you'd come here, Georgie. The voice was familiar, a voice he had once trusted, but now it sent chills down his spine. What is this? What is happening? Georgie demanded, his hand tightening around the coin. The figure stepped fully into the room, and as the light from Georgie's flashlight hit his face, the recognition hit him like a blow to the gut. It was one of the members of the Brotherhood. The same symbols Georgie had seen on the letters were now visible on the man's coat, faint but unmistakable. I've been keeping an eye on you for a long time, the man said, his voice cold and emotionless. Your father was more involved than you realize, and now so are you. The Brotherhood doesn't just let people walk away once they're in. Georgie felt a sickening twist in his stomach. His father's warning had been real. He wasn't just involved in something dangerous. He had been marked. And now, so was Georgie. I didn't choose this, Georgie shouted, his voice trembling with anger and fear. Why did he hide this from me? What did I ever do to deserve this? The man's eyes flicked to the coin in Georgie's hand, a slight smirk on his lips. It's not about what you deserve, Georgie. It's about what you were born into. Your father's secrets are now your own. You can't walk away from this. Georgie stepped back, his mind racing. What did that mean? What choice did he have? You have no choice, the man repeated, his voice lowering, filled with a chilling certainty. But you can choose to join us. You'll need to understand what your father was part of before it's too late. The Brotherhood has plans for you, Georgie. A cold shiver ran down Georgie's spine as the man's words hit him. This wasn't over. The coin, the letters, the warnings, it had all led him here. The Brotherhood was real, and now Georgie was part of something far darker than he had ever imagined. What had his father gotten him into? As the figure stepped closer, Georgie's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs felt frozen, paralyzed by fear and confusion. The coin, still gripped tightly in his hand, felt like a symbol of fate he couldn't escape. The game had only just begun.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.